To a lone rancher, her cruel father sold the obese 16-year-old, but he had plans no one expected. She was 16 years old, but life had already made her feel much older. The girl lived in a small, worn-down house on the edge of a quiet town where people rarely smiled and never asked questions. From the outside, the house looked ordinary, but inside it was filled with silence, anger, and heavy words that stayed in the air long after they were spoken. She had learned early that home was not a place of comfort. It was a place where she had to stay quiet, careful, and invisible. Her father was a hard man. Years of disappointment had carved deep lines into his face, and he carried bitterness wherever he went. He believed the world owed him something and that everyone around him was a burden. His daughter, in his eyes, was the biggest burden of all. He never tried to understand her struggles. Instead, he blamed her for them. He often spoke about her as if she were a problem that needed fixing, not a human being with feelings. The girl had always been different from other kids her age. She was heavier than most, slower in sports, and often out of breath. Kids at school noticed everything, and they were not kind. Whispers followed her in hallways. Laughter broke out when she tried to run in gym class. Teachers tried to help, but their words felt empty compared to the cruelty of her classmates. Every day at school was a test of endurance, and every day she barely passed. At home, things were no better. Her father compared her to other children in the neighborhood, especially girls who fit his idea of what a daughter should be. He complained about food, money, and shame, always finding a way to make her feel responsible. When he was angry, his words cut deep. When he was calm, he ignored her completely. Either way, she felt alone. Her mother had left years ago, disappearing quietly one night and never returning. No one talked about her after that. The girl sometimes wondered if her mother thought about her, if she missed her at all. Those thoughts often came late at night, when the house was silent and her mind had nothing else to focus on. She would lie awake, staring at the ceiling, imagining a different life. One where someone cared enough to ask how her day had been. Food became her comfort. It never judged her or looked away. Eating helped her forget, even if only for a short time. But that comfort came with guilt, and the guilt fed her father's anger. He often complained about how much she ate, even though he never offered help or guidance. He only criticized, never supported. Money problems made everything worse. Bills piled up, and the house seemed to shrink under the pressure. Her father talked more about expenses, about how hard life was, and about how she made it harder. The girl tried to help by doing chores, cooking, and staying out of the way. Still, nothing she did ever seemed to be enough. One evening, her father came home quieter than usual. His face was unreadable, his steps slow. He sat at the table without speaking, staring at his hands. The girl felt a knot form in her stomach. Silence like that usually meant something bad was coming. After a long moment, he finally spoke. His voice was flat, almost emotionless. He told her that things were going to change.
He said she would be leaving soon.
He did not explain much at first, only that she would be going somewhere else to live and work, somewhere far from town. Her heart started racing. Questions filled her mind, but fear kept her silent. When she finally asked where she was going, he avoided her eyes. He said it was a ranch owned by a man who lived alone. He said she would be useful there. He said it was better for everyone. The girl did not understand. She felt as if the ground beneath her had suddenly disappeared. She tried to ask why, tried to explain that she could do better, be better, but her father shut her down quickly. He said the decision was final. There was no room for discussion. That night, she cried quietly in her room, pressing her face into her pillow so no one would hear. She felt unwanted in a way she had never felt before. It was one thing to be ignored, another to be sent away. Her mind filled with fear. Fear of the unknown, fear of being treated worse than before, fear that this was her punishment for being who she was. In the days that followed, her father acted as if everything was normal. He spoke little, packed a small bag for her, and gave simple instructions. No comfort, no explanation, just orders. Each folded shirt felt like a goodbye she was not allowed to say. The girl spent her last night in the house sitting on her bed, holding a worn photo from childhood. It showed her smiling, younger, lighter in spirit if not in body. She barely recognized that girl anymore. She wondered if she would ever feel that way again. Morning came too fast. Her father drove her out of town in an old truck. The road stretched endlessly ahead of them, fields replacing buildings, silence filling the space between them. He did not speak during the drive. She watched the scenery change, feeling as though she was being erased from her old life with every mile. As they reached a dirt road leading into open land, the truck slowed. In the distance, she could see a small ranch, simple and isolated. Her chest tightened. This was it. Whatever waited for her there would shape the rest of her life. When the truck stopped, her father handed her the bag without looking at her. He told her to listen, to work hard, not to cause trouble. Then he left. Just like that. No hug, no goodbye. The girl stood there alone, dust settling around her feet, the ranch stretching out before her. Fear wrapped around her heart, but beneath it was something else, something quiet and unexpected, a small spark of hope she did not fully understand yet. She took a deep breath and walked forward, unaware that this place and the man who lived there would change her life in ways she could never have imagined. The ranch felt too quiet at first. After her father's truck disappeared down the dirt road, the girl stood still for a long moment, holding her small bag in both hands. The wind moved through the tall grass, and somewhere in the distance an animal made a low sound. Everything felt bigger than her. Too open, too empty. She had never been so far from town before, and the silence made her heart beat faster. She slowly walked toward the main building. It was simple, made of wood with signs of age but also care. Nothing was broken or falling apart. That surprised her. She had expected something rough and neglected, a place that matched her fears. Instead, it looked calm, almost steady, like it had been standing there for a long time without needing to prove anything. The door opened before she could knock. A tall man stood there, older than her father but stronger in posture. His face was serious, and his eyes were sharp but not unkind. He looked at her for a moment, taking her in, but not in a way that made her feel judged. It was more like he was trying to understand. "You must be the girl," he said simply. She nodded, unable to find her voice. Her throat felt tight, and her hands were shaking. She waited for him to say something harsh, something that would confirm all her fears. Instead, he stepped aside and said, "Come in, you'll be tired." No anger, no comments, just an invitation. Inside, the ranch house was modest but clean. There was a small kitchen, a table with 2 chairs, and a living space with worn but comfortable furniture. It smelled like fresh wood and warm food. The girl hadn't realized how hungry she was until her stomach quietly reminded her. "Eat first," he said. "We'll talk after." She sat down slowly, unsure if this was a test. But he didn't watch her closely or rush her. He went about his own routine while she ate. For the first time in a long while, she ate without feeling rushed or ashamed. That alone felt strange. After the meal, he sat across from her. He didn't smile, but his voice was calm. He explained that she would be staying there for a while. She would help with daily tasks around the ranch. Nothing too difficult at first. He made it clear that there were rules, simple ones. Respect, honesty, and effort. In return, she would be treated fairly. She listened carefully, expecting more. A warning. A threat. Something. But it never came. That first night, she slept in a small room with a bed near the window. She lay awake for a long time, listening to the sounds outside. Crickets, distant movement, the quiet breathing of the land. It was different from the noise of town, different from the tension of her old home. Slowly, without realizing it, she fell asleep. The next morning began early. The rancher knocked once and told her it was time to get up. She rushed to dress, afraid of being late. Outside, the air was cool and fresh. He handed her simple tasks, feeding animals, carrying small items, cleaning tools. He showed her how to do each thing without making her feel slow or weak. The work was harder than anything she had done before. Her body ached, and she felt tired quickly. But the rancher didn't complain. When she needed to rest, he nodded and adjusted the work. That confused her. She had learned that showing weakness usually led to criticism. Days passed and a routine formed. Wake up early. Eat. Rest. Eat again. Sleep. It was simple, but it gave her days shape. I would be so happy for the first time. Time didn't feel like something she had to survive. It felt like something she could move through. The rancher didn't talk much, but when he did, his words mattered. He explained why things were done a certain way. He believed in order and patience. He corrected mistakes without anger. Each small success earned a quiet nod, which somehow meant more than loud praise. She still carried fear with her. She waited for things to turn bad, for his kindness to disappear, but it didn't. When she dropped something, he helped her pick it up. When she struggled, he showed her another way. Slowly, her shoulders relaxed. Slowly, she started to believe that maybe she wasn't unwanted here. One afternoon, while they worked near the fence, she finally gathered the courage to speak. She asked why he had agreed to take her in. The rancher paused, leaning on the fence. He looked out at the land before answering. "People are too quick to give up on others," he said. "I don't like that." That was all he said, but it stayed with her. At night, she thought about her old life, about her father, about school, about how small and trapped she had felt. Here the work was hard, but it felt honest. Nobody laughed at her. Nobody blamed her for existing. For the first time, she felt seen in a quiet way. Her body still hurt. Her doubts still followed her. But something new was growing beneath all that fear. A sense of purpose. A feeling that maybe this place was not meant to punish her, but to teach her something she had never been given before. One evening, as the sun set over the land, she stood outside and watched the sky change colors. The rancher worked nearby, fixing a gate. She realized she hadn't felt scared all day. That thought surprised her more than anything else. She didn't know what the future held. She didn't know how long she would stay or what was expected of her in the long run, but for the first time in her life, she felt something close to safety. Weeks passed, and life at the ranch slowly began to feel real. What once felt like a strange place became familiar, through routine. The girl woke up before sunrise without being told. Her body still felt heavy in the mornings, but she no longer felt the deep fear that used to follow her everywhere. The air, the work, and the quiet had started to change something inside her. The rancher began giving her more responsibility. At first, it was small things. Checking water buckets, organizing tools, brushing animals. He explained each task clearly and showed her patience when she made mistakes. He never rushed her, never made her feel useless. That alone made her want to try harder. Her body struggled at times. Some days, her legs hurt so badly that she wanted to stop. Her hands became sore, and her back felt stiff. But instead of mocking her or pushing her beyond her limits, the rancher taught her how to work smarter. He showed her how to lift properly, how to pace herself, how to rest when needed. He believed effort mattered more than speed. Slowly, she noticed small changes. She could walk longer without getting tired. She could carry things that once felt too heavy. These changes were quiet, but they filled her with pride she had never felt before. No one had ever noticed her effort like this. One afternoon, the rancher asked her to help repair a broken fence. It was the most difficult task she had been given so far. At first, she panicked. She was afraid of failing. But instead of stepping in right away, the rancher stood nearby and watched. When she struggled, he offered guidance, not judgment. When she succeeded, he nodded and said, "Good." That single word stayed with her all day. As time passed, they began to talk more. Not long conversations, but enough to make her feel human. He asked her how she was feeling, not just physically, but inside. No one had asked her that before. At first, she didn't know how to answer. Her feelings were something she had always kept locked away. One evening, after dinner, she finally spoke about her past. She talked about school, about being laughed at, about feeling invisible. She didn't go into details about her father, but the rancher understood enough. He listened without interrupting. When she finished, he didn't offer pity. He simply said, "You're stronger than you think." They felt earned. The rancher had a way of teaching without lecturing. He believed that discipline created freedom. Each day followed a pattern, and that pattern gave her peace. She no longer woke up wondering what she had done wrong. She woke up knowing what needed to be done. Food was handled differently, too. Meals were balanced and shared at the table. There were no comments about her body or how much she ate. She learned to listen to her hunger instead of her emotions. Over time, eating stopped being a secret comfort and became something normal, something healthy. She began to notice how the rancher lived. He didn't waste time or energy. Everything had a purpose. Even rest had value. He worked hard, but he also respected limits. Watching him taught her more than words ever could. There were still hard days. Days when old memories returned without warning. Days when she felt the weight of her past pressing down on her chest. On those days, the rancher didn't push her. He let her work quietly or rest when needed. He understood that healing wasn't just physical. One day, while working near the barn, she asked him why he lived alone. He paused before answering. He said some people choose quiet after being hurt. He said peace was something you build, not something you wait for. She didn't fully understand then, but she remembered his words. As the weeks turned into months, the girl changed in ways she didn't expect. Not just in how she looked, but in how she stood. Her shoulders were no longer always hunched. Her eyes no longer stayed fixed on the ground. She started meeting the world halfway. She learned to trust herself. Each completed task, each small success added to something inside her that had been missing for a long time. Confidence. It didn't arrive all at once. It grew slowly, like the land around her. One afternoon, the rancher surprised her by letting her handle a task on her own while he was away. She felt nervous, but also honored. When he returned and saw the work done correctly, he didn't say much. He didn't need to. The trust he showed meant everything. That night, lying in bed, she realized something important. She no longer felt like she was being punished by being there. She felt like she had been given a chance. A real one. She thought about her father less now. The anger and sadness were still there, but they didn't control her thoughts. For the first time, she was focused on who she was becoming, not who she had been told she was. The rancher's plan was becoming clearer. He wasn't trying to change her into someone else. He was helping her uncover the strength that had always been there, buried under years of fear and neglect. One evening, as they watched the sun set over the fields, he spoke again. He said, "Life doesn't give fair starts, but it gives choices." She understood then. This place wasn't about escape. It was about rebuilding. As the sky darkened and the day ended, she felt tired, but it was a good kind of tired, the kind that comes from honest effort, the kind that lets you sleep without regret. She didn't know what the future would bring. She didn't know how long she would stay, but she knew one thing for sure. She was no longer the girl everyone had given up on. The change did not happen in a straight line. Even though the girl had grown stronger and more confident, life still tested her in quiet but powerful ways. Part of her still carried old fears, and sometimes they returned without warning. The ranch had become familiar, but comfort can also bring new challenges. When things stop feeling scary, the real work begins. One morning, the rancher told her that she would start handling more important tasks. These were not just physical jobs, but ones that required judgment and responsibility. She would help plan the day's work, check supplies, and keep records of what was needed. At first, the idea scared her more than hard labor ever had. Physical pain was something she understood. Responsibility felt heavier. She worried about making mistakes. In her past, mistakes were punished quickly and harshly. But here, the rancher treated mistakes as lessons. When she forgot something or misjudged a task, he didn't raise his voice. He asked her to think through what happened and how to improve next time. That simple approach slowly changed how she saw herself. She stopped seeing errors as proof of failure and started seeing them as part of learning. As her role grew, so did her inner struggle. Some nights, she lay awake thinking about her father. She wondered if he ever thought about her or regretted his decision. The silence of the ranch gave her space to think, and not all thoughts were easy. There were moments when anger rose inside her, hot and confusing. She didn't know what to do with it. One evening after a long day, she finally spoke to the rancher about it. Her voice shook as she admitted how hurt and angry she felt. She expected him to change the subject or give advice too quickly. Instead, he listened quietly, as he always did. When she finished, he told her something simple but honest. He said pain does not disappear just because life improves. It has to be understood before it can be released. Those words stayed with her. The work on the ranch became more demanding as seasons changed. Weather tested her patience and strength. There were days when rain slowed everything down and days when heat made every movement difficult. Still, she showed up. Even when she felt tired or unsure, she showed up. That consistency became her greatest strength. The rancher began trusting her with animals that required care and attention. She learned that animals responded not to force, but to calm and respect. This lesson mirrored her own journey. Just like them, she had needed patience, not pressure. One afternoon, something went wrong. A gate had not been secured properly, and an animal wandered farther than expected. No one was hurt, but the mistake could have been serious. Fear flooded her chest as she realized what had happened. Old habits returned instantly. She blamed herself and expected disappointment. When the rancher arrived and understood the situation, she waited for his reaction. He looked at the open gate, then at her. For a moment, he said nothing. Then he calmly helped fix the problem. Afterward, he asked her what she learned from it. She admitted her mistake, expecting shame to follow. Instead, he said, "Owning a mistake is strength." That moment changed something deep inside her. For the first time, she didn't feel small when she failed. She felt capable of fixing things. As weeks passed, she noticed how much she had changed. Her body was stronger, yes, but more importantly, her mind was clearer. She spoke more confidently. She made decisions. She trusted herself. The girl who once avoided attention now handled responsibility without fear. Still, growth came with pain. Letting go of her past meant accepting that some people would never change. That truth was hard. She realized that her father might never become the person she needed him to be. Accepting that hurt more than hoping. The rancher never told her to forgive or forget. He believed healing was personal. What mattered was not approval from the past, but direction for the future. He reminded her that her worth was not decided by where she came from, but by what she chose to do next. One evening, as they sat outside, watching the land grow quiet, the rancher asked her what she wanted for her future. The question surprised her. No one had ever asked her that seriously. At first, she didn't know how to answer. Then she spoke honestly. She said she wanted independence. She wanted to feel capable. She wanted peace. The rancher nodded and told her she was already on that path. That night, she felt something close to pride. Not loud pride, but steady pride. The kind that doesn't need approval. The kind that comes from knowing you earned where you stand. The girl understood now that the ranch was not meant to be a hiding place. It was a training ground. Every challenge, every responsibility, every quiet lesson had been preparing her for a life where she would stand on her own. She still had fears, she still had questions, but fear no longer controlled her choices. She had learned discipline, patience, and self-respect. These things had been missing from her life before, and now they shaped every step she took. As the season began to shift again, she sensed that another change was coming. Something bigger, something that would test everything she had learned so far. She didn't know exactly what it would be. The change she had sensed did not arrive suddenly. It came quietly, like most important things in her life now. One morning, the rancher asked her to sit with him after breakfast. His tone was calm, but serious. Maris. She felt a familiar tightness in her chest. Not fear exactly, but awareness. Something was about to shift. He told her that she had grown enough to start thinking beyond the ranch. Not leaving right away, but preparing. He explained that his goal had never been to keep her there forever. The ranch was meant to give her strength, skills, and confidence. The rest of her life was meant to be lived by her own choices. Hearing that made her emotional in ways she didn't expect. Part of her felt ready. Another part felt scared to step into the wider world again. The ranch had become safe, predictable. But she understood that safety should not become a cage. From that day on, her training became more focused. The rancher began teaching her practical skills she could use anywhere: budgeting, planning, problem-solving, and communication. These lessons were not rushed. He believed real learning happened slowly, through practice. She also began interacting more with people outside the ranch. Sometimes suppliers came by, or neighbors stopped to talk. At first, she stayed quiet, letting the rancher speak. But little by little, he encouraged her to handle conversations herself. Each time she did, her confidence grew. She noticed how differently people treated her now. Not because she demanded respect, but because she carried herself differently. She stood straighter. She spoke clearly. She listened carefully. The world responded to her change. There were moments when doubt returned. Old voices from her past tried to tell her she wasn't enough. On those days, she remembered the work she had done, the challenges she had faced, and the mistakes she had survived. She reminded herself that growth did not erase fear. It taught her how to move forward despite it. One afternoon, she received unexpected news. Her father had tried to contact the rancher. The message was short and unclear. Hearing about him again stirred emotions she thought she had already settled. Anger, sadness, confusion, all returned at once. The rancher didn't tell her what to do. He asked what she wanted. That question mattered. She thought carefully and decided she was not ready to see her father. Not yet. And that was okay. For the first time, she chose herself without guilt. As months passed, she began setting goals. She wanted education. She wanted independence. She wanted to help others who felt forgotten the way she once had. These goals felt real now, not like dreams meant for someone else. The rancher supported her plans quietly. He helped her research options, prepare paperwork, and practice interviews. He treated her not like a child, but like a capable young person preparing for life. The day came when she packed a bag again. This time, it felt different. There was no fear of abandonment, no confusion, only nervous excitement. She stood at the same spot where she had once been left alone, but she was not the same girl anymore. Before she left, the rancher spoke to her one last time. He told her that strength is not about never falling. It's about learning how to stand back up without losing yourself. He reminded her that she had already proven she could do that. She thanked him, not with dramatic words, but with quiet honesty. What he had given her could not be measured. He had given her belief. As she walked away from the ranch, she looked back once. The land stretched out calmly, just as it always had. It would always be part of her story, but it was no longer her whole world. Her future was waiting. She entered that future slowly, carefully, but with confidence. She faced challenges just like everyone else. Life was not suddenly easy. But she handled difficulty differently now. She asked for help when needed. She trusted herself. She didn't give up when things became uncomfortable. Most importantly, she no longer defined herself by how others had treated her. Her past did not disappear, but it no longer controlled her. It became part of her strength. Years later, when she thought about her life, she understood something deeply. What had once felt like the end of her world had actually been the beginning. Being sent away had not broken her. It had saved her. She was no longer the girl people underestimated or ignored. She was a woman who had built herself through patience, effort, and self-respect, and that was the rancher's plan all along, not to rescue her,